Birthday Party by Eider Rodriguez. Read by Jessica Branton. At the end of term meeting, Izadi's teacher told me that she should take up a sport to find her inner strength, to spend time with other types of people, to make new friends, to become more self-reliant. That's what she told me, and more besides. Like every year, I pretended to be astonished, but I knew. I was used to keeping her close. I thought it was best, or perhaps I didn't know, I wasn't sure. I wanted to enjoy having a child as much as possible. I had never looked after anything or anyone for long, and it was always more complicated than it seemed, much harder than loving someone. Weekends, holidays, our days, I was used to organising things like a series of teaching units. Over the last year I'd been too tired, and maybe that was why our relationship had started to deteriorate. That summer I signed her up for a canoeing course against her will. I used to go with her to the clubhouse door and went back for her when they'd finished. I found it suffocating to think about all the things I wanted to do during those 2 hours. Instead of enjoying the freedom, it made me sad and uneasy. I used to leave Izadi there, park the car, and go to a cafe in the Santiago part of town. I was going to read a newspaper for the first time for ages, or just sit in the sun and have a cup of tea. But I couldn't deal with that and ended up going back to the river. I used to sit on a bench and look at the water, looking for my child amongst the dozens of them in the canoes. She was always apart from the groups, absolutely always, although I didn't know if it was really the case, or whether it was just my imagination. Other times I went to the bike lane, and worried about going too far, walked up and down it. I hadn't been there before. There were little red and white houses to the left, factories opposite, and Irun's skyscrapers to the right. But ignoring the surroundings and just looking at the river, it's a wild place there in front of me, the sort of place that always makes me feel things. A long time ago I heard that it was good for women who were sad to look at moving water. The movement helped them to let out the bad feelings they had inside. Whether that's true or not, I found things I wasn't expecting in the water. I discovered the smell of marsh and the mystery of the mud. On the last day, Izadi showed me an envelope when I went to pick her up. "Claudia's invited me to her birthday party. It's tomorrow." There was a dolphin on the card. On the back of it was a hand-drawn map with a red dot on it, the name of the street and the day. "Bring your swimsuit" was written on it in Spanish. "Who's Claudia? Friend?" She wound down the window and called out, "Claudia!" A girl in the distance wearing a baseball cap lifted up her arm. She was taller and fatter than Izadi. "She says I can go!" Izadi shouted across. Perhaps the birthday party would let me squeeze out another 2 or 3 hours. "She's got a mark on her face," she told me. "That's why she has to wear that baseball cap with flaps." I hadn't realised, and I looked at my little girl to take her in, but by that time she'd already withdrawn into herself. "Because you've never come to see me." We had a little quarrel. Very carefully I explained that I needed time for myself, and that she too had to learn to spend time without me. I didn't tell her I used to watch her from a distance. Izadi kept quiet. She used to do that to get out of wherever she was. "The kingdom of silence," I used to say to her. "When are you going to come back from the kingdom of silence?" "What's it like? Maroon?" I asked her to find out more. "Is it maroon?" "I'm talking. What is it like? Purple?" She didn't answer me until we were almost back home. "Brown. They took a bit of skin from her back and put it on her face. I think the others find it revolting, but I don't." "Good," I said. "That's very good." I looked at her in the rear-view mirror to show I was pleased, but she was looking straight forward with a serious expression on her face. She has pretty eyes. Lots of people have told me that. I sometimes wondered if her grown-up-looking figure was pretty too, whether beautiful people do things like that, whether it's more strange people than beautiful people who do things like that. Special in a good way or a bad way. Can you be strange without it being in a good way or a bad way? When I start thinking things like that, I usually go too far, and then I have a job coming back down to earth. Izadi didn't want to give her something we'd just made at home. Contrary to my criteria, we bought her a soy lunar dowry in exchange for us both making her a sponge cake. Is that okay with you? I don't mind, Izadi told me. But I did want to make it, something we made together. I really like making the most of that type of opportunity. Izadi accepted the deal. She was very excited. She loves seeing other people's houses, and she was speculating about what Claudia's house might be like. I think they're rich. She's told me they've got a swimming pool, and she's got a playroom full of toys. Having a lot of room means that you have to do a lot of work to pay for them, and having to do a lot of work means that you don't have a lot of time to be together. Can't we use normal flour? Wholemeal is normal. It's for old people. Well, you like it. The others don't. It'll be tasty, don't worry. Can we be rich? We are rich. We used to talk about that time and time again, but Izadi wasn't prepared to give up on it. We live in a 2-bedroom house. The fridge is full. We each have our own wardrobe. We have a large balcony which is full of strawberries. You've got 4 grandparents, friends, a van, loads of shoes. We're never hungry. We aren't ill. We go on holiday in the summer. Yeah, right. I made a sign for her to stop beating the eggs. I'll finish it. Off you go, please. I didn't look at her. I knew how to make use of silence as well as she did. Izadi cleaned the leaves of the rubber plant in the living room, one by one, using cotton wool and water as I taught her to do when she was very small, when she needed to calm down. When she'd finished, I went up to her to give her a hug, but she walked away. You want to do something great and you end up getting angry. We were alchemists at turning gold into trash. Come to the kitchen. You're going to like this. She was calm, and I let her do it. We put a heart-shaped mould into the oven. When we took it out, we put carob cream onto it, and then, as a treat, I let her sprinkle it with frosted sugar. Then she dressed up really smartly. She had little freckles on her nose from the sun. We followed the map and got there right away. There were 2 red balloons on the fence outside. She got burned, she said to me before we got out of the car. That's why she has that mark. She looked at herself in the mirror, pinched her cheek, and pulled an ugly face. They took a piece of skin from her back and put it on her face, but you can still see it. It was an old, tidy-looking Basque-style house with ivy and bougainvillea covering half of its facade, and plants were growing over the fence by the front door. Izadi went in first with the present. The coloured balloons led us round to the back of the house, to the garden. Claudia came to meet Izadi right away. She was larger than I'd thought. The skin and flesh arabesque took up more than half of her cheek, and part of the skin on her head too. If it hadn't been for that, she would have been a beautiful child, with dark eyes and thick lips. I stood there, smiling at her. There were 2 women sitting at a table, each of them smoking a cigarette. One of them put hers out against a flower pot when she saw us, and came towards me. I'm Nieves, Claudia's mother, and you must be her new friend's mother. Izadi's mother, yes. Nieves wore her hair like Rita Hayworth. It was well thought out. Half of her face was disfigured, too, just like Claudia's, and to cover that up, the waterfall of dark, curly hair fell over the part which had been destroyed. The other woman, sitting at the table, got up from the bench and picked up her bag. "I'll come back in a couple of hours." She walked up to the girls in the blow-up pool. "Girls, behave yourselves. I'll come and pick you up later." And she turned towards us. "Nieves, give me a kiss." I was too embarrassed to say that I had to go too. "Izadi and I have made a sponge cake," I told her as the other woman left. "Thanks, I'll put it there." On the terrace table there was a tablecloth and plates with Walt Disney characters on them, plastic containers full of popcorn, sandwiches, pickles, 1.5-litre bottles of soft drinks. "Heart-shaped, that's pretty." She looked towards the girls. Sideways, you didn't notice it on her. "Claudia, look what your mate's brought." There were 2 other little girls there, as well as Izadi and Claudia. They were all around 10 or 11. "Do you want a coffee?" she asked me. When she smiled, her mouth went out of shape, as if an elastic band were pulling at one of her lips. "I don't drink coffee, thanks." "Maybe you want to go and get things done. Don't worry, I'll manage. That's the thing about having a birthday in the summer. Fewer people go to your party than during the school year. Nothing you can do about it. Claudia's used to it, apparently. You can't imagine what it was like at first, but now she finds out who's going to come and then gives out the invitations. 3 or 4 of them come." Her voice trailed off. "And I'm happy with that, naturally. I'll stay, if that's okay with you. It's nice here." I sat down next to her on the wooden bench. She was under a vine, in its shade. "We planted this when we came here 7 years ago, and look at it now." Both of us looked up at it. Nieves closed her eyes. Like that, she looked like a reptile. It was a burn. It went down below her neck. I closed my eyes too. And that's how we remained until Nieves whispered, "My husband insisted. He built this framework with 4 posts. He's from a small town near Logroño. He moved to Bilbao as a child, and it seems they had one like this on their patio. He put it up when we moved here from Bilbao, and look now, after just a few years," she said, looking at the swaying bunches of grapes. "You're right, it's nice here." "I don't have green fingers. I always buy the toughest plants in the shop. I hardly even pay attention to their appearance." "I'm no good with them either. They need attention, trust, confidence. Some of them have to be left alone. The less attention you pay them, the prettier they look." She picked up a pickled onion with her long nails and put it in her mouth. We looked upwards again. The vine's branches were red. It looked as if they had blood in them. So much life could come out of those frail, splintered trunks. "They're having a great time," I said, looking towards the swimming pool. "Kids are best with other kids. Is yours an only child too?" "Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about." And we closed our eyes. The girls sat at the table, wrapped in their towels. Izadi, all skin and bones, was shivering, her lips darkened. She pointed at the popcorn, and I gave her permission to eat it, being a special occasion. I had to make a great effort not to measure the poison in each handful she took. The 2 sisters got out a paper bag from under a chair and gave it to Claudia. It was pyjamas with a pink tutu skirt. Claudia put it on right away. "Oh, that's really pretty," said Nieves. Claudia arranged the skirt, held her arms up like a ballet dancer, and spun around. I thought it was grotesque. When she took it off, I thought I saw the bit of her back which had become her cheek. Izadi gave her a present too. Claudia opened it and gave her a big hug. "Soy Luna!" Izadi blushed. I saw her run her arms up Claudia's back without pausing. Claudia looked a lot older than Izadi, almost like her mother, even though she was just a few months older than her. "Put some cream on. This sunlight's hotter than it seems," Nieves said, and threw the girls the jar of cream. And she grabbed hold of Claudia before she could run away, put some cream on her hands, and spread it all over her body. When she finished, Nieves put some on her face, using her little finger softly, putting 2 layers on the burn. Claudia looked at me to see if I was looking too. I smiled at her. "Everything's okay. The world's perfect. You're perfect," I wanted to say to her. She sighed. She tucked the hair she used as a curtain behind her ear, and Nieves put some cream on her, a layer thicker on the burnt side of her face. I didn't look away from what she was doing then either. I didn't want her to feel bad. At the end, she freed the hair from behind her ear and put it in front of her face with a lot of style. I smiled at her. You could see her lower gums when she smiled. She spread the leftover cream on her kneecap and lit a cigarette. "We have to be careful with this bloody skin," she said. "Where are you from?" I asked her. "I don't know anymore. Hentyre isn't a bad place to start again," I told her. "That's what they say," she said, although I'd never heard it before myself. "We're okay here, much better. Lots of people come here to start again," I said, hoping the words would fill the space between us. Another lifestyle, another climate, other habits, another language. Sometimes it's better not to understand what other people are saying, don't you think? And all of a sudden... Yeah, all of a sudden. And what are you two doing here? You aren't local either." "We're real estate exiles." That's what I say when they ask me. But to an extent I came here to find Kilometre Zero. You know what it's like having a child. "Bang!" she said in a loud voice. "A bomb goes off in the middle of your daily life, but you're the only ones who hear the explosion, right? Nobody else does. We had to make a change after the accident." "You had an accident?" She pointed at the cigarette she was smoking. "A butt end that wasn't put out properly, and the house caught fire when we were asleep." "A long time ago?" 9 years ago this summer. We lived in Bilbao then. We were too well known in our district, and it wasn't easy being around people. On our way home from work, we used to try to bump into as few people as possible, and we went to Logroño at the weekends, looking for a place where they wouldn't know us. In the end, the insurance paid up, and the city council gave us a little money too. And here we are. Clemente had the idea of coming here. He works at Decathlon in the offices, and he asked for a transfer to Irún, which they gave him right away. We aren't the sort of people who think things over too much. We follow our hearts, and here we are. "You divorced?" she asked me, as if she'd found the answer to a riddle. No, we're alone, Izadi and me." "That's good too." "Yeah, like everything." "Do you want a drink?" "I'm thirsty. I'm going to have a beer. Do you want one too? We've got muscatel as well. It's the only type of wine I like." "I'll have a beer too, thanks a lot." When she went to get them, I watched the girls. I hadn't told her I never drank. I thought it was in bad taste. I don't really know why. They were sitting on the grass. Claudia was talking, the sisters were listening to her, but Izadi had her back to them, looking at something on the ground. I resisted wanting to go up to her and ask her to turn around. "And do you know what the worst thing is?" said Nieves when she got back from the house. "This year I've started smoking again. I'm hopeless. I've ended up setting up my own company, and what with all the stress, well, you know. At least no one tells me off about it. It must be harder for people who are starting up, don't you think? What do you do, if you don't mind me asking?" "I'm at the health centre in admin. It isn't what I like, but it has good bits. It doesn't take up much of my mind. It gives me the chance to take all my holidays in one go during the summer, so I can spend them with Izadi doing our things. Time. That's good. I'm going to call the girls, get them to come and have some cake before their mother comes. She took a sip, and I saw she had to dry off some beer which had dribbled out of her mouth. When Nieves lit the candles, we all sang Happy Birthday to Claudia. Izadi moved her lips, but without making a sound, as if her ventriloquist were missing. Claudia took a deep breath, blew her cheeks out, and waited by the little flames until the song was over. The prints on her skin were like the shapes of the flames, and leaning over them it looked as if the marks were moving. We clapped when she blew them out. Claudia was really moved. She was obviously too emotional, and that wasn't good. She lifted her hands to either side of her face, and her eyes were welling over. After cutting the cake, which was made of doughnuts, Nieves offered me a slice. "There's no harm once a year." I turned it down. Our sponge cake was untouched. Instead, I picked up a gherkin to show I was grateful, even though it was at least 10 years since I'd eaten anything like that. "Hey," said Nieves when she heard a car horn. "You two, your mother's here. You've got to get dressed." The girls walked away with wine gums in their hands, and Nieves and Claudia walked with them to the door to say goodbye. I went up to Izadi. She was sitting on a deck chair, holding onto a plait which Claudia had half finished for her. "Are you having a good time?" "Yes." "Really? It doesn't look like it. We'll be going soon." "Not yet," she said. "Not yet. Soon." Claudia and Nieves came back, holding each other by the waist, smiling as if they were sharing a secret. They had their burns on the same side, but you didn't see them at all from a distance. "Claudia's had an idea," Nieves said to me, and let her daughter continue. "Will you two stay for supper? I'd really like that. Please stay," said Claudia, kneeling down and with her hands up as if she were praying. "Clemente will be here any minute with Chinese food. We always buy too much and have to eat it over 2 days. Nieves backed her up. "Do you eat everything? Otherwise I can make a salad or an omelette or both." Izadi looked at me. I found it hard to see what she wanted. "Please," Claudia said. "It's my birthday." I looked at her torn-up cheek. "Why not?" I answered her in both our names. Izadi went up to our sponge cake and stared at it. "Do you want a piece?" Nieves asked her. "Don't be shy, dear." She cut a triangle from our sponge cake and gave it to her. Izadi ate it with pleasure. I was touched. Nieves took a piece too and nibbled at it, holding her hand up to her mouth to stop crumbs from coming out. "It's fantastic. You must give me the recipe," she said to me. "Do you want a cardigan, or shall we go inside? It's got cooler." I helped to clear things up and we went into the house. The girls ran upstairs. Nieves went to the kitchen with the plates and things, and I was alone in the living room. It was full of things. There were old-fashioned pieces of furniture mixed with wicker pieces, different coloured cushions, plants. It was a strange combination of things, and it looked provisional, but it was clean and tidy. There were 4 remote controls on a piece of cloth. You could see red lights from electronic devices all over the place. An L-shaped sofa was what took up most of the space, and it faced a giant television attached to a wall. There were dolls in the fireplace. Above that, on the marble mantelpiece, there was a souvenir from somewhere, a mouse made of shells, and next to that, a metal crucifix with charred feet. I looked away from that when Nieves came back into the living room. "Who knows how to play?" I asked her, pointing at the Yamaha keyboard behind the sofa. "Claudia and I do a bit," Nieves said, "but Clemente's the real artist." Back then, Her hands seemed to express some distant past, a time before the fire, I understood. He used to play in a group. He sings really well, but now he only does that for us at home. It's a pity. We sat down on the sofa. She took her sandals off and made herself comfortable. I did the same. You could hear the children walking around upstairs. It was relaxing. The moment when everything changes, I thought. The moment when you aren't there and your daughter becomes what you would have wanted. Then I noticed their photo on the glass table. A photo of the three of them. It was hard not to look at it. I felt uncomfortable, although Nieves must have been used to that. In fact, perhaps it had all been planned out. She picked it up, blew on it, and cleaned it with the sleeve of her dress before showing it to me. This is one of the few photos of us left. It had been taken in a studio. They were sitting on the floor, barefoot and dressed in white. Nieves was wearing a summer dress, a bow on the neckline, and her smile looked invincible. It was a Mediterranean type of beauty, tangible, easy. I hadn't imagined her husband like that. He was suntanned, he had a wide forehead, wore his hair long in a smart way to make up for his receding hairline, had 3 or 4 buttons open on his shirt, the bottoms of his trousers turned up. He looked large. He had a scorpion tattooed on his arm and was wearing some leather wristbands. Claudia was the only one looking serious. She must have been about 18 months. I imagined all that flesh and cloth in flames like paper napkins in a bar. "What a good-looking family," I said. "Yeah, isn't it?" Nieves turned the photo towards her and looked at it closely. "That's what we were like. My husband and I were watching a film and we fell asleep on the sofa. Getting out of there alive was a miracle. And Claudia? That really was a miracle. Her room was the one at the back. My husband brought her out. She rearranged her curtain of hair. I saw him going through the flames and coming back. He had Claudia wrapped in a blanket, both of them on fire. I'll keep the details to myself. Believe me, it's best. At least Claudia won't remember anything. Fortunately not. We lost everything. Our home, clothes, photos, memories, the letters Clemente and I had written to each other. We used to write to each other a lot, starting when he did national service. Just imagine, when he came back from that, he went to England to learn the language. Nowadays any kid does that, but not back then. Together since we were 17. Just think, everything lost. You can't imagine what that means, losing everything, everything. And look now, I told her without being too sure of what I wanted to say. Look now, she agreed with me and backed me up. I still have nightmares about the net curtains we had in the living room. The wind blows them inwards, they float there, they're like ghosts, floating over me. I'm on the sofa, sometimes watching TV, other times my daughter's asleep next to me, and all of a sudden they're on fire. That's when I wake up. She opened her eyes and sat up on the sofa. I'm going to shut up. I don't like hearing about other people's dreams. I get really bored. What about you? I don't know. I never thought about it. I hate other people's dreams. I get like that about other people's holidays. She laughed. You were born again. That's a great credit to you. Yeah, but I'll tell you something. It hasn't done us any good. We live outside the normal, outside the rules. And people can't hide what they think. When it's not charity, it's disgust. And there are people who prove their kindness by putting their respect for us on display. You've no idea. There are a lot of vile people in the world. Good people too. I have to say that to be fair, there are good people out there too. She was speaking to me as if I was part of none of those groups. It was strange. But it's Claudia I'm most worried about, how she'll get on from now on, even bearing in mind the surgeon's magic fingers. You should have seen her. And look how pretty she is. At least she is for me. I tried to keep smiling in agreement. She's very pretty, and she seems like a girl with a lot of things going for her. Izardi's mad about her. Nieves liked hearing that. Yes, she does have a lot of things going for her. And she's cheerful. I'm not sure about the rest, but you're absolutely right about that. Clemente whistled as soon as he opened the door, and the look on Nieves' face changed. It was subtle, but I noticed it. It was just a tiny smile. She looked more relaxed. I thought perhaps she hadn't been at ease with me until then, and all of a sudden I felt I was in the way. He was loaded with bags. His entire face had been burned, which affected me less than seeing just a part of it like that. It looked as though the sides of his eyes were melting, but the burnt part was uniform elsewhere, with just slight variations in texture and colour. He shook my hand. His hand was also burnt. He gave Nieves a long kiss and smoothed her hair. "And guests too, this is great," he said when he let go of her. "Where's our little angel?" "Upstairs with her new canoeing friend," Nieves answered. Her husband was balder than in the photo, his grey hair in a ponytail. He took his jacket off without saying a word, put it on a coat hanger and sat down at the piano. He rolled his sleeves up, undid a couple of buttons, and moved his fingers about in the air. I saw that the scorpion had survived the fire. Claudia ran downstairs as soon as the first notes of Happy Birthday rang out. She gave her father a strong hug from behind. Nieves stood still in the middle of the living room, looking at them with pride. Izardi came down too and sat next to me on the sofa. I put an arm over her shoulder and drew her towards me. When he finished playing the song, Clemente took a handkerchief out of his trouser pocket and dried his face. Nieves put a cool beer on the keyboard without asking him, and after taking a long sip, he sat in front of it again. "Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy, caught in a landslide? No escape from reality," he sang a cappella. "Open your eyes, look up to the skies and see, I'm just a poor boy, I need no sympathy, 'cause I'm easy come, easy go." Nieves and Claudia looked at each other. Perhaps they were following some family code. Izardi and I went up to them. Clemente played the first chords of Bohemian Rhapsody, moving his head from one side to another. "Mama just killed a man, put a gun against his head, pulled my trigger, now he's dead." Against all expectations, he had a wonderful voice. "Mama, life had just begun, but now I've gone and thrown it all away." He turned towards us after the first stanza with a tired-looking smile on his face. By then we were all standing around him, sheltered by the sofa, each mother doing a little dance with her daughter in silence during that fragile, beautiful moment. When he finished, he sat there for a second, his back to us, quite still. We stayed still too, unable to move. He looked younger when he turned around. We were all younger and lighter. He finished his beer. Nieves went out onto the terrace to smoke a cigarette. "Come with me if you want," she said before going out. "No, I'm fine here," I answered. Then I turned towards Clemente. "Don't you smoke?" "No way," he said as he slipped his shoes off and put on some flip-flops. "As much beer as I want, a whiskey from time to time, but no smoking. If you go to European cities, real European cities like Paris, Brussels or Barcelona, just look at how many smokers you see there. In undeveloped countries, on the other hand, there are loads of them." I got the impression he'd given that speech many times before. He seemed bored himself with what he was saying. "My belly's rumbling," he said in a different tone, and rubbing his stomach. "What about you girls?" And then he tickled Izardi on her waist. "This girl's got less meat on her than a bicycle. Don't you feed her?" Izardi broke away from him, but politely, and went upstairs after Claudia. "You've got a beautiful voice," I said to Clemente. "I'm astonished, to tell the truth." You didn't expect that, eh? He said happily, and he looked straight at me for longer than I would have liked. Beautiful and special. He laughed out loud and repeated, beautiful and special. I kept looking straight at him, serious, letting him know I really meant it, that it was important to me. It's a pity you're married, otherwise I'd sing at your wedding. I'm not married. Don't be annoyed, he said, holding his hand out. No need to get angry. I don't take myself seriously. It's better for me that way. His hand was soft. I stroked the tip of his thumb for as long as I dared to. We let go of each other when we heard Nieves. By that time, the living room was full of the smell of Chinese food. Nieves came in carrying an oilcloth with a flower pattern on it. She spread it out on the low table in the living room. Then she took the containers from the bags, placing them on top, and arranged the cushions around the table. I realized she seemed smaller since Clemente had come, as if the air had gone out of her, but she didn't seem angry or sad, just peaceful. Claudia and Izadi took charge of taking the lids off and uncovered all kinds of sticky food. Clemente brought in the muscatel. We all sat on the floor. We used forks, and they used the chopsticks. Nieves winked before touching her glass to mine. She'd pinned her hair back, and the burn was plain to see. She seemed to have woken up again. "Many happy returns, you lovely thing," Clemente said to Claudia. Her eyes were welling up, as were Nieves. Claudia kissed her fingertips and blew her parents the kisses. "We're very proud of you," Nieves said, and blew her a kiss. Izadi was looking at her plate. I took hold of her chin, wanting her to lift her head. I stroked her chin. The food wasn't as exotic as I'd expected. They brought our sponge cake out for dessert, and everyone praised it. I felt like one of the family. We had a good time. I think they had a good time too. I hugged them when it came to saying goodbye. "Thank you, really," and I touched my heart. "Thanks to you too," Nieves answered. "And keep on playing, that was wonderful," I said to Clemente. He tucked a strand of my hair behind my ear as if that was the normal thing to do. Nieves closed her eyes as if to give her approval. They came out to the gate. Clemente held Nieves about the waist, and she put her head on his shoulder. Nobody made any promises. I asked Izadi to sit next to me in the front. We held hands on the way back. I thought I'd come across something very special on that long afternoon, something like what I felt when I found shells on the beach. And I wanted to hang on to it. I didn't want it to get away. I wanted to keep it inside me forever. Keep the discovery separate, even though I knew the wonder would disappear, little by little.